digitaljamsessions.com.
Hello and welcome to this Digital Jam session. We are coming at you live from Expo North in the sunny hills of Inverness. And today we are joined by our returning regular contributor, Mr. Brian Baglow. We have with us Eric from, I'm going to say Made in Me.
Yes.
We have good Charles, who's now, I'm going to have to guess because you've got like so many things going on at the moment, but you have just recently launched two books or two titles.
I have it. So I have a new book called The Lobster Boy and the Fat Lady's Daughter, and I'm also launching a news and fundraising platform called Lightful.
There we go. Nate joins us as well as another victim from the music industry, no less.
Music, art and technology. I'm a publicist, former music publicist exclusively, but now that extends into art and technology, and I'm here launching Charles's platform with him.
Okay, so they're joined at the hip.
We are.
Awesome. And we have with us the lovely Eleanor, who is formerly RTE?
TFN.
I knew it was one of them.
Yeah, letters.
Letters. French TV.
Yeah.
French TV. And having recently come off the back of doing some lovely 360 content, I believe.
Yeah. And a lot of animation, mostly animation.
Lots of animation, lovely. Eric, would you like to explain what Made in Me is, just for the benefit of our audience?
Sure, Made in Me, we are a digital agency, a creative agency, digital publisher based in London. We make apps, we make websites, we make kids' brands. Yeah.
They make a lot of things. And Mr. Baglow, not that anybody needs reminding, but just for those of the listeners who might be new and not have heard of you yet, why don't you tell them what you do?
I'm Tanya's emergency guest when she can't find anyone else. In my spare time, I run the Scottish Games Network and I'm the exec producer for Team Rock.
Thank you. Welcome very much to joining us then on this session. And today's topic, randomly, we are going to talk about the impact of artificial intelligence on your current industry and what you do. So I'm curious to find out actually from you, Nate, given that you're working in the music industries,
Brilliant.
exactly how you feel that artificial intelligence is necessarily going to impact what you do on a day-to-day basis, and whether or not this is narrow AI that you're talking about, or if you're talking about complex AI, because you seem to know the difference between the two.
Don't know the difference at all between narrow AI
It's a podcast,
and
nobody can
complex AI. No. In terms of AI, so I'm hoping that AI will mean that I just won't have to do my job. You know, AI will know exactly who I should be pitching to the media, pitch them, respond accordingly with a sentient filled answer, and then, hopefully track that publicity and move on. You know, then I can just sit there and watch the publicity machine do its own thing. And I don't really know. You'll have to explain to me the difference between narrow and complex AI.
Okay, so I, for the benefit of everybody who doesn't know the differences between these things, I'm going to borrow from our previous guest Dennis Mortensen from X.AI and explain it in this way, which is that narrow AI is very much a singular AI. So it's looking at a singular task and how to speed up or circumvent that specific individual singular task. So that's, for example, exactly what he does with his business, which is X.AI. Not that I'm promoting your company, Dennis, that schedules meetings for you. So Amy or Andrew, depending which variation of the AI you have, will basically help to schedule your meetings for you, therefore removing you from that equation and reducing the amount or volume of emails that you have to deal with. So that's what we would call narrow AI. And then the other end of that spectrum, we have complex AI, which is things like... Well, no, not really. No, not really. It's still narrow AI to a certain extent. We're talking about things like Watson. So IBM's Watson, for example, which has the cognitive learning aspect. So the interesting thing, though, with things like Watson, with cognitive AI, is that you're essentially getting to a stage where AI can be creative and make new decisions and new choices. And that's one of the reasons why people were so excited about the fact that an AI was able to beat a master of Go, is because it was able to come up with completely new strategies that hadn't been taught before. So it's not just reiterating what you put into the machine, it's actually forming new strategies. It's being creative in its application of the information that you put into it. So that's what cognitive AI is all about, is this idea of complexity. Whereas narrow AI is very much about, let's just make it really easy to do something. So in your case, Nate, when you're talking about for the music industry, you want something that's just going to be able to connect the dots for you in terms of that musician needs to be interviewed by that press, or, you know, that interview happened, etc. and so forth. It's very singular information that you're essentially streamlining.
I imagine with your explanation there, what would be truly amazing is if you could feed in a piece of music, take on a new band, for example, And a lot of this comes down to your own instinct and understanding music, understanding trends, and understanding how to connect those things to the right writers. But imagine a scenario where you can feed that music in and the computer will listen to that music, and then it will start to draw out journalists not only in your database but then people online who are also writing, so it can start to pair off those writers that you might not even thought of. Match not just on their experience but what they're currently listening to or something.
And there are already aspects of that are happening. There's a Spanish company whose name I can't remember that does analysis of pop singles, and it's not only analyzing the lyrics but also the timbre of the music in order to try to find thing that is similar enough to recent hits but new enough that it sounds advanced. And a lot of record companies are making bets on this, on what singles they're going to back and not back, which, to be honest, is really stupid.
It's like the guys at Netflix when you try to sell them a film and they're like, oh, well, we looked at our algorithms and and that's the price we pay.
Yeah.
A lot of the music industry now is really, really heavy behind data-driven insight. Yeah. So there's that platform, is it Revelator? And it's backed by some dude from Ireland, Universal. But that's pretty much about being able to make the right choices based on the data information you've got. So you suddenly have a wave of activity, social media-wise, in Mexico, to start pushing your marketing efforts in that direction. So there's a lot of people saying, data is the way forward for marketing music. What it's doing, so if you take that data model to the A&R process, it cuts out the humans. So everyone goes, oh, it's brilliant, so we know it's popular because it's got these hits, as Charles says, it's been analysed, but it completely takes away the human element to what A&R is. And it used to be called an R for a reason, because a lot of it's based on gut instinct, and I think gut instinct still has a huge part to play, so I don't think AI can ever truly replace it unless it was a segment.
There's one more thing that's being done in the music industry with all of this, and you touched on when you were talking about data a little bit, is that you can monitor data for plays. So like every time anybody plays any file, you can know that and where they are, right down to the zip code. So if suddenly there are 14 plays of a particular single somewhere in Indiana, you can know that, and you can redirect your ad resources toward that area and have a regional hit. And that's such an interesting thing to be able to do. But as you say, cutting the human element out of A&R, it's worth remembering that the A stands for artists.
Yeah. Right? I mean, I think for marketing and publicity, I think it's really important, but for publishing as well, acquiring a book is very much a gut feeling many times. There's a company now called Inkit, which is also using algorithms to find they can predict a bestseller by where people are stopping to read because that chapter is a bit boring or where they drop off. But what they do is then they get it to an editor to say, this is where the algorithms are saying the book is weak. Have a look. And more often than not, the editors go, the story really fails here. And then they redo the book and they put it back out there. So I think using AI to sort of pick out this is the weak part of this creative work, but you still need a human element, I think, to make it better, to kind of rewrite it or edit it.
It's interesting though, because what you're kind of highlighting there is this actual assumption that AI means the replacement of the human element or the human interaction, whereas
it could be a tool.
It could be a tool.
And right now it is a very quite and a powerful one. Yeah, you're right.
And when you talk about this, about the book, so Amazon knows where people drop off in books. They know whether you've read chapters, where you pause, and so on. As a novelist, I wish they'd share that with me. I could make my books a lot better if I knew which parts.
And Inkit shares that with their authors as well. So I think it's interesting. It's a data AI-driven business.
I think it's already deeply ingrained in the advertising business, the media buying. It's all based on who has the best data, and they use it, in a very, very powerful way for their big clients.
This is where we need to be very, very distinct between data and analytics and artificial intelligence.
Right.
So at the moment,
it's not the same thing.
No. I mean, you can use AI and feed your analytics into that and get far better intelligence out. But so again, coming back to the games world, being purely digital, we are only now starting to plug the sort of analytics in that the advertising markets have always had. But we can do so much more, down to the point where it's not just where people stop playing, but how they play, how you segment them, how you reward them. We've got prediction engines now. There's a company in Edinburgh called Delta DNA who, you can use their stuff for free, and it's only once they've actually made you a certain amount of money and they're increasing your revenues by a certain percentage before you pay them. And then you can start using their prediction engine so that you can actually figure out exactly when you, as a player, are going to drop out of this particular game and what offer they should make you in order to stop you leaving. Because it's all about the return player, it's all about retention, it's all about monetization. And I think this is where data and analytics comes into its own. But the use of AI could absolutely transform that. So rather than having, forgive me, a data nerd, an analyst sitting in the corner of the office who comes back with your insights document and says this is what's going on, you can actually track this in real time, and you can have your AI actually essentially tracking you as a player as you play, and sort of going actually
allocating resources in lifetime. Yeah.
Totally. And this, rather than doing this on a daily, monthly, weekly, average user basis, that kind of thing, you could have an AI essentially running the huge online games like Warcraft, EVE Online, all of the big online games. That's where we could really start to see some exceptional differences and real sea changes in the interactive entertainment sector.
It's interesting though, because from a games industry perspective, I mean, to a certain extent, some people would say that emergent narrative is ripe for AI, because you've got this style of narrative design that needs to happen in real time, and it needs to be influenced by what's going on.
Chris Rofford, a very famous game designer, has been talking about this for the last 2 decades, and it's yet to happen, because creating narrative is hard. In the panel we did this morning, looking at tech companies as the new creative powerhouses, we saw a film script that had been written by an AI after analysing a whole bunch of other film scripts. Frankly, it was balls. It was like a student film, but even more angsty and kind of pointless.
Thank God.
I was going to say on the games, I don't really play games, so I go.
It's not mandatory.
My insight's fairly pedestrian, but. Am I right in thinking that some games have the capabilities in AI terms now that the game learns your moves? So if you're playing like a role-play game, it starts to understand how you kind of, complete certain puzzles and tasks, so then it makes them harder. I mean, that feels like a good thing, 'cause it's making the game harder and more challenging.
Well, you say that, but then it's how you use it, because in any big online game, cheating is a huge issue.
Yeah.
And what happens is a lot of people are using bots, which are little bits of code doing exactly that, which help do these smart little things like improve your aim or actually make you a far more lethal player.
Oh, wow.
And so a lot of the bigger companies now have started issuing lifetime bans to players who are caught using bots within the games.
All right.
There's also, there's a rhythm of difficulty in the linearity of a game that I think is really important, and it paces a person moving through the game and drives their motivations and keeps them from churning if you get it right. I'm not sure I would trust an AI to do that right. Yeah.
There was this, moving the conversation on a bit to sort of like a robot, is that there was a company about 2 years ago in publishing who was creating this robot that kind of analyzed sort of like what kids liked to read and their interests and tastes, and would serve up stories that it would read out at bedtime. And the company's no longer around. Do you remember that?
Yes,
and what they found though is, number one, is that the kids didn't really like it because the robot was not a replacement for the parent and having that kind of interaction. But what did work was the social aspect, that the parent and the kid and the robot was something big, but they ran out of money and they weren't able to continue. But I thought that was interesting, that the whole kind of replacement that, artificial intelligence, I think the way to think about it now that you said that is as a tool. How can we use it? And it's not about replacing people, I think. Not in this type of situation, anyway.
We're starting to see areas, and across the whole of the creative industries, of what used to be called gamification, and now to kind of get away from the negative aspects is being called business rules automation, which is essentially looking at what your users do.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Business rules automation.
Yeah, it's like what we used to call gamification, but nobody wanted that on a business card, and plus the marketers took it and ruined it.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but it basically means exactly what we've been talking about, whether you're a listener, whether you're a reader, whether you're a player, whether you're a viewer, it's looking at what you do and then creating a response based on that, good or bad. The fact that you've not come back for 3 weeks, the fact you've not opened the last 2 newsletters, the fact that you have just gone into the game, or you've only read half a page, what's wrong? And it's recognising all of this and then creating responses around that. So we're in the very, very early days, but that again, I think that's where AI is going to be.
So is AI like, the ads that Google serves me, is that AI or is that analytics? Like, what's the?
That's analytics.
Well, an algorithm, really.
It is an algorithm, right?
More than anything else.
So when does it become AI versus just an algorithm? Because an AI is a sophisticated algorithm,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Is it-
Spotify suggestions almost like AI, really.
exactly.
There's
Or
an algorithm.
It's generating things. Like algorithms just crunch data, right? It's like a data crunching. Then when I was talking about advertising, they crunch data, and then so the best media companies have the best data crunchers that they then show to their clients, and they say that's why you should come with me, and I'm going to make the best campaign for your.
And so AI is then-
AI is a creative layer on top that actually, if I understand what you're saying, is like it interprets it and offers solutions.
So it's not if this then that, and it's it's not a simple algorithm. It's something that's actually taking the fact
It's like
that you
moving it.
rather than the Amazon
Taking the
recommendations.
analysis of it.
Yeah.
So it's a learning algorithm.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So it's
But
like
it
a bot that
proposes
sits on your
things.
phone
It's
and tells you to
creative.
do stuff.
It generates ideas.
Yeah.
It generates solutions, or I don't know what the right term is.
Okay.
It's not just anticipating you. It's kind of learning more about you on a deeper level.
It's a machine learning algorithm in some ways.
Okay.
Think Facebook, but run by machines rather than third world workers.
Run by the Borg.
Run by the board. I like that.
But
I
I'm
like that image.
curious, Eleanor, from your perspective and a film industry and TV perspective, where you see AI necessarily having impact.
Well, I guess in television it could have definitely an impact in marketing. It could have an impact in terms of private television. One of the most important relationships in terms of business is with the people who buy ads. So maybe it could help them do their business. In terms of content creation, I don't know, maybe you can use it in testing things with audiences, like testing ideas and possible outcomes. Like studios spend a lot of money doing focus groups and then going back and changing the ending. So is there a way you can use artificial intelligence in that? I don't know. That all seems very linear and kind of. How could you do that?
The TV programs. Because am I right in saying Charles was involved in this project with a watch that could measure biometrically your response to being in front of a show or a film or a TV show.
Oh, right, or
so
sports
could it kind of link the data that comes from that watch to then go to the TV and then start building and serving you TV programs that it both thinks you'll enjoy, but also what kind of mood you might be in at that point. So your heart rate's nice and low, you're calm. It might go, hey, we know you like horrors. It's Saturday night. Why not have a horror movie to up that heart rate a bit? I don't know. Is that
The thinking
in the
behind
movie,
it.
It's going to take you to another movie?
No, the thinking behind this, it started actually out of the games industry with free-to-play game design, because there's an issue with testing free-to-play games in that you actually have to release them into the marketplace in order to test the mechanics to get people to spend money in the game. And that's a very expensive process. So what people do, they'll release in Canada, test and iterate, because Canadian consumers behave like US consumers, but nobody cares about Canada.
Yeah.
So that's,
Absolutely.
We like Canadians, we do.
Absolutely true.
And so
Soft launch in Canada.
And so what we were thinking,
the happening spot.
what we were thinking was a potential solution to this is if we could track and monitor emotion and excitement based on skin conductance and heart rate and so on, then we could predictively test these mechanics in the games. And you can do that except for free-to-play, because often someone won't spend money in a game for 2 weeks. So you can't lock someone in a lab for 2 weeks, and test whether or not they're going to churn. So we thought the
Canada,
best.
that's the other reason that we like it so much.
So the thinking was we could use smartwatch technology in order to monitor these things.
Right.
And the trouble is I tried to set it up in Scotland and it all went to hell. But, that was a different story.
Okay.
Doesn't surprise me.
One of the things that we always ask everybody on the show is what you think is going to be that significant change, be that technological or cultural shift. What do you think is going to be that one thing that's really going to change the game for how you do business? So I'm going to start with you, Brian, because you've had the most experience at answering this question.
So I've already answered it twice before. Robots.
Care to define or elaborate?
Yeah, Daleks. It's like anything that can deal death and has artificial intelligence. Yeah, we're looking at a Westworld scenario. So no, I'm teasing. I think the AI is currently where we were with VR about 3 years ago, which is, oh my, we can do all of these totally awesome things, like what? We don't quite know yet. I think within the game sector, I think the use of AI to actually run gaming environments, massively multiplayer online games, is going to be a huge thing. Whether they can be used in a generative sense, I'm not entirely sure. I think within a narrower context within games, something like Google Now, that can actually, come up and tell you, you know what, you should be doing this, or can surprise you, or give you something that you didn't yet know that you wanted to do, or that you had to do, is going to be incredibly complex. But whether or not that comes to pass in the next 5 years, I'm not sure. In 10 years, certainly, but I think that's going to be one of the biggest changes. And the fact that can then be hooked up to an API so that you can tie into a Watson or a game's equivalent of Watson to basically get AI into your game is going to be fairly massive.
Okay. Eric, what's your thoughts?
And robots.
And robots.
Yeah, robots. I think it's more, I'm fascinated to see what publishing looks like when kids who are right now 7 become 18.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of news about how the ebook market for adults has plateaued. It's not growing anymore. And digital reading is dead. But I just think that these are the last. We all grew up with physical books, and it's interesting to see someone like my niece who's 7, who she has both, and she doesn't see the distinction when she's a teenager, and then when she's in her 20s, how they want to read.
Yeah.
To me, that'll be interesting.
Okay. Charles, what's your thoughts?
I think the representation of identity in social media networks is going to be a really big deal. I think it will connect people to other people and other things in ways that's never happened before, and I just can't wait to see it happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm always really fascinated with projects that kind of at the moment use sort of like GPS and apps and things to kind of augment layers over reality. So, working with an app that delivers sound works, whether it's a narrative or fact, whilst you're walking in an area, the fiction's more interesting because it augments a new reality over real reality. But with where technology is at the moment, I'm interested to see in the future when it's so kind of cheap and ubiquitous as hardware that real augmented layering or augmented reality might change the way we engage with content in our sort of real world. And then who's going to own that space?
Yeah.
Public real space and private real space. Then you've got this sort of digital public space, but at the moment the digital space is sort of private space. I don't know. So this whole thing for me, as a PR and a marketing person, I find potential of what that could be really exciting.
Okay. And Eleanor, what's your thoughts on this?
I am kind of waiting for like the anti-technology revolution. A little bit. I know this. I'd like to see lots of space for people to be off all kinds of social networks and everything and see what that happens, because I think that we're losing time. We're losing our personal space in a way. And so I think that I'd like to see a little bit more measure, I guess, and where's the ethics in this, and how are we making a better planet, and how are we contributing to a better future for our children?
Okay.
Yeah, I get a bit overwhelmed by all of it sometimes, and because I'm interested in stories, I'm interested in like the hard kind of straight, direct to your heart impact of stories in music or whatever it is. So sometimes I think that I spent a lot of time working with engineers at one point, and you get really kind of caught up in the mechanism and you kind of forget all the people.
Okay.
I like your answer best. That was good. I like that.
You can't borrow answers, you can't change.
No, I'm going to nick that for the next podcast.
So thanks very much for joining us on this Digital Jam session. As always, we'd like to give our listeners a way to be able to find out a little bit more about you and what you're up to by asking you to share with us your social media handle of choice. So I'm going to start with you, Brian.
At Flackboy or at Team Rock Games?
Thank you.
At Medcabnath, that's MEDCABNATH.
Thank you.
At Charles Creel, Kriel.
Thank you.
At DinoBoy89.
And that is all Twitter, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Hello?
Instagram
Hey, I like it. Somebody's being different.
Yeah.
What's the
I'm
idea?
not sure what my idea is.
We shall find out and post it in the podcast notes. But once again, thank you for listening to this Digital Jam session. If you enjoy this content, don't forget to subscribe and review and follow us on Twitter at Digital Jam Ltd. DigitalJamSessions.com